Hello and welcome to this Thursday edition of the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast, a show that is for the fans, by the fans. I am your phenomenal host, Mr. Podcasting, Chris Belcher. You can follow me at Chris Belcher24 on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The show is at PBW Podcast on those platforms as well. Make sure you give us a follow. Make sure you interact with us on social media. That's the best way for us to know if you're digging what we're doing. We want to talk about what you want to hear about, and the best way to let us know that is through our social media. So that's at PBW Podcast, again, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Make sure you throw some love and support to the BodySlam.net YouTube channel. Subscribe there, hit that notifications bell. Support all the other shows as well as us. I know they would appreciate it. Throw some love over to Tom and Sports Wire Radio. I know that they would appreciate that as well. All of your sporting needs running 24/7 on Sports Wire Radio. I know they would appreciate your support. Great channel over there, so make sure you check it out. And of course, if you're listening to us on a regular podcast platform, Spotify, Apple Podcast, whatever you have chosen to listen to the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast, thank you for doing that. Hit that subscribe button. Once again, my name is Chris Belcher, joining me back from vacation this week. He's got that Florida vibe going on. Mr. Andy York, the young buck, is back. Andy, it's good to have you back, man. How are you?
It's good to be back. I'm doing good. I'm excited to be back on. I full disclosure, did not watch any of wrestling last week because I was busy with being in Florida and letting the mouse take all my money. But other than that, I'm good to go. So I'm ready. I'm kind of caught up on what's been going on, and I'm excited to dive into it, man.
Yeah, the mouse takes all the money there in Florida. I definitely understand that. Trust me, we're going to Disney in October, and my son is already.
Oh yeah,
Disney October? Yes, we know. Yes, son, yes. So not looking forward to that. Anyway, beside the point, man, it was a busy week in wrestling last week. I flew solo on our regular podcast last week. Which was a lot of fun. And I got a couple of those topics that I want to follow up with you on. And then also this past Monday, Jared hopped on the podcast with me and we talked all about the history of WWE BackLash, since that is coming up this Sunday. A lot of great stuff at the BackLash pay-per-views that probably a lot of people probably looked over. So again, as we said last week, I encourage you to go back and look at some of those BackLash matches if you haven't already. That Randy Orton Mick Foley hardcore match. And then, of course, you've got stuff from the two-man power trip. You've got what I think is the best BackLash match ever between Edge, Randy Orton, John Cena, and Shawn Michaels at Fatal 4-Way from 2007. So just a lot of great stuff that we didn't even talk about. Some last man standing matches and just some great stuff. So go back and check out your history of BackLash. Shoot us some love on that episode. You're wearing the shirt, and I'm going to shout them out. Shout out to our boys Hunter Knott and Rosario Grillo, TSF. They had a fantastic match this past weekend at CCW in Nashville. Coming up a little bit short, though, on the effort to win the tag team titles, but what a fun match it was. I talked to those guys after the match, and it was just their matches, every time I see them, just get better and better. So shout out to those guys. I know they're listening on a fantastic effort. It is WrestleMania BackLash preview show that we're bringing to you today. But of course, we got to hit some stuff from AEW. And Andy, as I said earlier, I flew solo on last week's current product episode, but I want to get your thoughts on a couple of things that I covered. Not necessarily you breaking down what I said, but just your thoughts on a couple of the things. First being a lot of fans complaining about Adam Cole getting overused. You and I have talked extensively about this topic on both sides of the spectrum, whether that's underusing Adam Cole or now a lot of people are talking about overusing him. That he doesn't feel special because he's on every week and yada, yada, yada. What's your take on that? As far as not necessarily what other fans think, but your opinion on what they're doing with Adam Cole right now.
Yeah, I think I don't really know, because we were here a couple months ago talking about how they only used him for Rampage, and like he only showed up on Rampage and certain things like that. And now we're talking about him being overused too much. I don't see it necessarily as being overused too much, because I feel like he's one of those guys that should be on TV every single week. And I think he should be in a high-profile feud every time because he is a main event guy. He is one of their biggest stars. And so that's my not concern, but that's my take on it. Is I think he should be the forefront of AEW. I think he's one of the guys that he doesn't necessarily need to be in the title picture to be, kind of like to the front of everything, kind of like what Jericho was for a while. Of he wasn't necessarily in the title hunt every time, but every feud he was in felt special because it was with Jericho, and I think Adam Cole kind of fits that mold of everything he's doing right now feels special because Adam Cole is involved. So I don't necessarily see it as being overused. I enjoy what they're doing with him right now. I think he is the most consistent guy in the company. Apart from like a John Moxley and a Bryan Danielson, but I think he is in there as one of the most consistent guys in the company. And I enjoy seeing him week to week. So I don't think it's necessarily being overused. Just he's not at the top where everybody expected him to be. He's kind of filling his role, and I think he'll be at the top of the. I think he'll be at the top of the card again very, very shortly. But I think he's just kind of in that in between phase right now of doing other stuff, and then he'll go back after the title.
Yeah, I think this conversation would be different if he was the champion. I think a lot of people would want him there on TV every week if he was the champion, but he's not. So they're kind of like, I don't know, they're kind of towing between two lines here.
Right.
They want him to feel special, but at the same time, they want him to be on because let's face it, apart from like a Danhausen or Hook, even I can put him in that category. Adam Cole's the most popular guy in AEW. Yeah. Like he gets the biggest reaction when his theme music hits. Like there's no denying that pop. So
right.
For the majority of fans, it's not being overused because they want to see him every week. Right. I think it's just wrestling fans being fickle as they normally are.
Not wrestling fans.
No, not wrestling fans, not at all. One other thing that I want to follow up with you on is the comments that Becky Lynch made last week about the AEW women's division. She was asked about them in an interview. Basically, she said that they're not in WWE's league, like that they don't get the time, they don't have the talent, therefore time plus talent equals getting over, and they're not getting over. What do you think? I know we've talked about the women's division and how it really seems like it's Britt Baker and then it's everybody else. Mm-hmm. And that we've been critical about how they've booked the championship run of Thunder Rosa so far. What do you think as far as, do you think that they should get more time, and if they got more time, they'd get over? Or do you think it's a matter of exactly what Becky said? They're just not as talented and they just don't get the focus that the WWE women's division does?
Honestly, I think it's a mix. I really do. I think it's a little bit of both of I don't think the AEW women necessarily get the time to shine. And the fact that it really was for a while just the Britt Baker show, and I would argue the Jade Cargill show, because she got a lot of time to do a lot of things.
Right.
But it seems like now we're starting to see more and more people kind of get that chance to be on TV with an AEW, because now we're seeing Serena Deeb a lot. We're seeing Thunder Rosa as champion, Nyla Rose, still Jade Cargill, still Britt Baker, people like that. Even Julia Hart. Like, we don't talk about Julia Hart a lot. She's kind of in the middle of a feud between the House of Black and the Varsity Blondes. Like, she's kind of in that in-between stage right there. And I would argue, like, WWE doesn't necessarily put the women forefront unless your name is Becky Lynch or Charlotte Flair. Like, I think that plays a part in it as well. And I don't necessarily want to say that they're not as talented as the WWE women are, because yes, Charlotte and Becky and Sasha and Asuka are some of the best wrestlers, men or women, in the world today. There's no denying that. Honestly, I think you could put Britt Baker in that category as well. But for every Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch, there's Dana Brooke and some other women that are not as talented as some of the other ones. So I think it's a mix of both, honestly, of when they get the time to shine in AEW, they really start to take off. and they really start to do well. But they also have a lot of green talent that are not fully developed yet to be at that point.
Right.
Now, in 5 to 10 years, we could be saying the complete opposite about, you know, Anna Jay being one of the top women stars in AEW, because I think she has the potential to do that. It's just she's got to get that opportunity and prove herself and things like that.
Well, I think it also a factor that I don't think I mentioned last week, but AEW doesn't have a performance center type area or training facility like WWE does, where Charlotte and Becky and Bayley and Sasha and whoever could go in and get their reps and perfect their craft every single day. AEW doesn't have that.
Right.
So I think if AEW had something like that, those women would be better. Now that goes, that doesn't take away from the fact, let me spit it out there, take away from the fact that we had an AEW main event featuring 2 women last night on Dynamite for the Undisputed Ring of Honor Women's Championship.
Yeah.
And it was really good. And it was 2 seasoned veterans that knew what they were doing. I think that's the difference, is that AEW doesn't have the seasoned veterans that WWE does, because Charlotte and Becky and Asuka and Sasha have been doing this for forever, know? And then you've got the Julia Harts, like you talked about. And I think Serena Deeb's been at it for a while, but she doesn't really get the time that everybody else does. The Jade Cargills haven't been doing this forever. Britt Baker hasn't been doing this for a long time.
Right.
So I think it's a matter of time, but if it takes too much time, does it mean as much in 5 years? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that plays like kind of like I said, like in 5 years, we could be having a completely total different discussion about all this once they get more experience under their belt. Because you also got to remember, like, a lot of these women a lot of these AEW wrestlers that are coming in are not used to TV wrestling. Like, there's a big difference in TV wrestling and how, like, independent show wrestling. And I think that definitely plays a part. I think Serena Deeb is a perfect example of she did the 5 minutes challenge or whatever on Rampage. And like, that was some of the most fun stuff because she is a seasoned veteran that knows what she's doing. The AEW Dynamite main event was really good because Mercedes Martinez doesn't get the respect I think that she really deserves. And because we were there in Nashville for Martinez versus Thunder Rosa in that street fight, and it tore the house down. Like, the crowd, like we were like, the crowd was hot for that. So I think it just depends on, they need to have the right women in the right place with the right mentors helping them get to that next spot. And I think, like you said, if Charlotte and Becky and Sasha and Bayley didn't go through NXT, I don't think they would be as big of the stars as they are now. And I think with Ring of Honor, AEW now kind of has the chance to do that with Ring of Honor stars, bring some people in that are not as well known, that are young, and train them. And then once they get to AEW, then that's where they really will start to take off and become more of the forefront.
Yeah. I agree. It's just a matter of, like, not to go down too far of a rabbit hole here, but it goes back to the philosophy of AEW and WWE in the fact that is the women's division, is the development of the women's division, is the development of young stars like that, is that a high priority for AEW?
Right.
You know what I mean? Is that something where they want to be able to do that? Or is that just something where they're putting them on TV for the sake of they need to put them on TV? You know what I mean?
Right.
Because we haven't mentioned Hikaru Shida, we haven't mentioned Riho, any of those ladies, and they're seasoned veterans as well, but it just and do the fans even want it? You know what I mean?
Right.
It seems like that the WWE fans that, we saw the movement of the Divas Revolution and all that kind of stuff, and that was organic from the fans, supposedly. Is there an opportunity to do that in AEW? Is that a focus of AEW? Or, I don't know. I think that's a question that we can speculate and we can wonder. It's a matter of philosophy, I guess, and what they want their company to be.
Yeah, and I think it depends on the person because I honestly like Britt Baker is one of the biggest stars in AEW, and there's no denying that fact of like she for a while was more center, like she was more the center of Dynamite than Paige was as champion, and like
Right.
I think that really tells a lot in the fact of how much they put into Britt Baker. But the problem is when you put that much into one person, everybody else in the division feels. You know, we had the conversation when she was champion. Who is going to be the one to beat Britt and it feel legit? They built Thunder Rosa up to be that person, but now you got a 2-woman thing now, and everybody else doesn't fill up to that spot. So you've got to kind of share it around. Because I would even argue like in WWE when Bailey, Sasha, Becky, and Charlotte and Asuka hold the title, only one of the other 4 feel big enough to beat them. You
Correct.
could throw Ronda in there as well, but
Yep.
only feel big enough to beat them. We don't think Asuka versus Alexa Bliss, and I'm a big Alexa Bliss fan. I know you're a massive Alexa Bliss fan, but we don't feel all the time like, oh, Alexa could have potentially have this. We feel like this is just a stepping stone until we get Charlotte in here, or we get Becky in here, or Bailey, or
Right.
Sasha. So I think it's just you got to make everybody feel special. You got to make everybody feel bigger. And obviously WWE does that well sometimes, doesn't do it well sometimes. Obviously AEW does it well sometimes. I think AEW does it perfectly in the tag division, but they haven't figured it out in the men's division or the women's division. It's just
Right.
specifically in the tag division that I feel like at any given time, I feel like anybody can win the tag titles, and I don't necessarily feel that way in all the other divisions as well.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think it's a matter of, company philosophy, and they're still getting their legs underneath them, and we're
Yeah.
still only 3 years into this. So we're 3 years into WWE. I mean, it was Hulk Hogan and nobody else. So like, it is what it is.
Yeah, it
But
takes some time.
I just think it's interesting. Um, what else stood out to you on AEW this week? I know that we've spent a little bit of time on AEW and we need to get to WrestleMania Backlash, but what else stood out as far as Dynamite, Rampage, and moving forward? What stood out to you?
Well, 2 things I'll throw out really quick. One, actually 3 things really quick. Blackpool Combat is my favorite thing in AEW right now. I
Yes.
love their matches, and when they do the spot of having everybody in a submission at the same time, I pop for it every time. I love them. I love what they're kind of doing right now with the House of Black and Varsity Blondes with Julia Hart. I feel like last night was the time to pull the trigger to turn her if she was going to join House of Black. So now I'm kind of curious of what they're going to do there. And then with Paige and Punk, it felt like Paige was more of the heel last night cutting that promo, which is kind of interesting. I don't think necessarily they're going to go full face versus heel because I feel like you don't have to do that in this case. But if
Right.
anybody is going to play more to the heel side, I would rather it be Paige than Punk at this point because I think it fits better than anything else.
Well, and is CM Punk really going to be a heel at this
Right.
time?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
we talk about guys that are legends, and it's a hard time with them being a heel. Edge is doing a great job of it in WWE, which we'll get to in a minute.
Yeah.
But a lot of guys at this stage in their career can't be heels. Shawn Michaels tried to be a heel for a little bit in his last run, and we saw how
Yeah.
well that happened. It didn't work at all. So I think it's that way with Punk. And I'm like you. Like, I think that Adam Page definitely needs to play more of the heel, and it doesn't necessarily have to be heel and babyface, but somebody's
Right.
got to push the edge a little bit, as they always do in AEW feuds, and Page is definitely the one to do that. Early predictions. I know that we're going to see that at Double or Nothing, and we're still, several weeks away. Do you think it's time for CM Punk to take the title, or do you think this is just another stepping stone for Adam Page?
I kind of see it both ways, but honestly, I think it is the time to put it on Punk. And I think Punk kind of holds it maybe for a couple of months, and then on it, like I'm telling you, I think MJF comes in and beats Punk for the title, and MJF is the new champ. Beating CM Punk in Chicago would be fantastic. I think that would be a great way to do that. And then we're kind of going off to the races with MJF. But I think that honestly, like, I feel we're at the point with Page where who else is there for him to beat at this point? because he went through Bryan Danielson. He won the title off of Kenny Omega. He went through Adam Cole. He went through Lance Archer. If he goes through Punk, I mean, who's next? Who's going to be the next guy to step up and beat him? So I think it is the time. I think it is Punk's time to win the championship and then hold it for a while, but not be one of the longer reigning champions. Just right. I think it's going to get to MJF from this point.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know. It will be a huge win for Adam Page, but like I said, or like you just said, rather, where do you go from there? I don't know that there's too many places you can go from there to make it feel big and special. So I think you're right. I think you need to go Punk in this situation.
Unless Kenny shows up. And if Kenny shows up at the end, then I feel like Kenny versus Paige is another route you could go. But is Kenny really going to win the title for a second time off of Paige? Right. And that's kind of where that goes. And
if Kenny does win the title, is it just to put the title on Adam Cole? Does it mean more for Adam Cole to win the title from Kenny than, whatever?
Yeah.
All right. If you are just now checking us out, welcome to the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast, a show that is for the fans, by the fans. I am your phenomenal host, Mr. Podcasting, Chris Belcher. Follow me at Chris Belcher24 on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The show is at PBW Podcast. Make sure you throw us some love and support on social media. We'd appreciate it. You guys have thrown us some love and support on our audio versions of our episodes on the traditional podcast platforms. Here recently, we've seen an uptick in listens. So thank you so much for that. We appreciate it. Make sure you're subscribing to us. That way that you get the new episode every time it drops to the device of your choice. Of course, I am joined by the young buck, Mr. Andy York, and I did not disclose this up top, but your boy, the host here, has been fighting through been under the weather all week long, and I'm still feeling it if you can hear that. So I certainly apologize, but we're going to keep on trucking. We're going to do our best here. And I know Andy has got a lot to say on this next topic. While he was on vacation, we texted a little bit. This was one of the big things that we texted about was we had some NXT releases that came down. I think it was on Friday last week.
Yeah.
Something like that. Cause it was after I recorded the episode or I would have at least mentioned it. So I think it was on Friday. We had some NXT releases come down that I know Andy is never happy when NXT people get released. But this one surprised some people. I mean, you had Dexter Lumis get released, Malcolm Bivens, Dakota Kai, Harland. Then we find out later on that Roddy Strong requested his release. I can't say again that I'm surprised by any of these, but at the same time, I haven't watched NXT 2.0 and regularly in quite a while.
Right.
Andy, what's your thoughts on some of these? And your thoughts on these guys popping up somewhere else?
So the one that's like the two that surprised me the most, and then I heard the reason behind one, and it didn't surprise me as much. So I'll save that one for after this one. The Dexter Lumis one really surprises me because he was literally in the middle of a feud, like at this point in time. And I forget what her name is, but she was released as well, and she like both.
Oh
Dexter
yeah.
I forget what her name is.
About it. Yeah, me too.
But both of them were in the same feud together, and they got released. So it was like, why? That to me, that makes no sense. Malcolm Bivens really shocked me until I saw that he wanted his release, or he wasn't going to re-sign. Same thing with Dakota Kai. Dakota Kai, to me though, I really don't know what the disconnect with her was in NXT. Like, I really don't understand how she never was NXT Women's Champion at some point. I believe she's had 2 title reigns in NXT for a grand total of 3 days, which is shocking and depressing because I feel like she really deserved better than that. I was in the building at NXT TakeOver War Games when she turned heel on Tegan Nox, and the road that she went on and the rise that she went on from that was incredible. And they kind of just did nothing with it. So I was really shocked by that. I think she could go to Impact and be a right away star. I think she could. You could sprinkle her into AEW if you really wanted to, and she could kind of be one of the forefront women there. I think wherever she goes, she's going to be a big star right away. And I think with Malcolm Bivens, he's hilarious. He's funny, and I think he could really go anywhere and be a manager for anybody. And then with Roderick Strong, like all of his friends are gone. Why would he want to stay? So I kind of get why he asked for his release of. And like, here's the thing: if he's in a group, they're going to be gone within the next like 2 to 3 years. Apparently,
It seems that way, doesn't it?
He joined Undisputed Era. They were gone. He tagged with AOP for a while. They're gone. The Diamond Mind or whatever, they're gone basically now. So it just, I don't know. But if they didn't want to resign, I understand why WWE was just kind of like, okay, then we'll just, release you, go do whatever you want to do. But yeah, the next report that I heard is that they're expecting to do releases every 90 days, which if that's the case, that's a little weird, but business is business, I guess. But yeah, it was just the Dakota Kai one really shocked me, and that's the one I think that's going to come back to bite them the most is her being gone.
Yeah, there's always the one. We talk about it in these releases all the time. There's always the one that's going to come back to bite them, whether it's a Samoa Joe or an Adam Cole or Matt Cardona or what have you.
Right.
Shout out to my boy Matt Cardona. By the way, listen, the next NWA pay-per-view is called Always Ready. That's the boy's slogan.
Uh-huh.
He is on the forefront. He is right I know he's the champ, but he's right in the middle of NWA. Like, congrats to that guy. I mean, holy cannoli. Making more money than he ever has. He's getting more notoriety than he ever has. Good.
Yeah. I honestly don't think it's a matter of if. I think it's a matter of when he shows back up in WWE as a massive star.
Absolutely.
Like, I think the same treatment Cody got is going to be the same kind of treatment that Cardona got. Yep. And I really hope he doesn't come back as Zack Ryder. I hope they let him come back as Matt Cardona and let him be him. Like, I think that was going to be a lot of fun. Could you imagine us sitting here 6 years ago saying that I want to see a Cody Rhodes Zack Ryder feud, and I want to see a Cody Rhodes Matt Cardona feud so bad.
Yep. Well, I mean, it's like Cody. I don't think Matt would come back to WWE if it wasn't what it is now. If he can't bring what he's doing right now, he won't do it. And fun fact, if you listen to Cody Rhodes on After the Bell this past week, which is a fantastic podcast, if y'all haven't listened to it, they talk a lot about Matt Cardona because Cody is close with him. Vic Joseph is close with him. And he said that Matt is really the one that pushed him to go back to WWE because when he talked to Matt about it, he said a very close circle of friends knew that he was talking about going back. He thought Matt would say no, but Matt said absolutely go back.
Yeah.
It's like, this is the redemption story. So by Matt saying that and saying it in that context, that makes me think if Matt has the opportunity, Matt's coming back too.
But he's going to make him pay. Like he's going to make him pay big time money because he's a big time star now. So
yes, absolutely. Well, there's a rabbit hole for us to go down with Matt Cardona. But anyway, NXT releases. The 90-day thing, I think it's going to be interesting if that ends up happening and working out that way. I think it's certainly, I understand, like most jobs that you go into, man, regular jobs, you get a 90-day, not necessarily trial period, but you get a 90-day evaluation period. So I think it shocks a lot of wrestling fans that that's a thing, but like, guys, any other job, that's pretty much a normal thing too, So
yeah,
I get that it's kind of weird, but
I don't think they do it like every 90 days for the same people. I think it's the new people get a 90. So like seeing someone like a Dakota Kai who's been there for 5 years now, 4 years now, something like that. She's been there for a while to see that, or like, honestly, I was expecting when they said NXT releases, I was expecting LA Knight's name to be on the list. I'm so glad it wasn't. I don't think he's going to be there long, though. I think he's one of those guys that he's going to be released, and I think he's another one that if he is released, it's going to come back to bite him because the dude is solid in the ring, but his mic work is top notch, and I think that's another one that we got to watch out for.
Did you follow him a lot before he came to NXT?
Mm-hmm. When he was in NWA and stuff, he was killing it for a while.
Okay, because I was just curious because I didn't really follow him in Impact when he was there, but I didn't. I knew that he wasn't. I mean, he was a name there, but I didn't follow him enough to know if he was doing as well as he is now.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. WrestleMania BackLash is coming up this Sunday. Full disclosure, we will most likely not be live on the channel after the show just because of work schedules and all that kind of stuff. That's my bad. But we will be coming to you on Monday morning with our full recap of Backlash, what happened, our thoughts, and all that kind of stuff. So look for that episode to come out on Monday morning. But let's preview the show, man. Lots of good stuff to get to. I mean, the Backlash train continues. This looks like to be a really good card. We're going to go through a couple of these matches here. Let's start with the main event. It was supposed to be a tag team title unification match between RK Bro and the Usos, and it is now turned into a 6-man tag, adding Drew McIntyre and Roman Reigns to the mix. Another example of WWE not knowing what they're doing and kind of pulling something out last minute. You're shaking your head. Give me your thoughts.
So this was my biggest concern with putting the titles on one man.
Yes,
because now neither one of them are being defended as of recording. Neither one of them are being defended on the pay-per-view. Now the tag titles are not being defended on the pay-per-view. The only, I'm going to say the only, but the biggest intriguing match to me on the card for Backlash was RK Bro versus the Usos for the unification. And now it's just kind of a 6-man tag. It's a house show match, really. And it's the main event of a pay-per-view after WrestleMania. I hate the direction they're going with this right now. Now, if they come out on SmackDown and say all titles are on the line now, like all titles on the line, if Drew wins and the RK Bro wins, then Drew's the WWE Universal God, whatever the champion they're calling it now. And the RK Bro are the unified tag champs. That's fine, but I don't know if they're going to do it because I really don't know if they want to unify the titles yet or not. And I don't really know if they understand what the word unification means. So that whole thing is really confusing to me. And I literally was coming home in my hotel room and I saw the graphic of it's now a 6-man tag with no titles on the line. And I was extremely confused. Watched Monday Night Raw and was still confused. So I don't understand the direction that they're going with this. And man, I feel like Roman's kind of cooled off a little bit since WrestleMania. Like I feel what happened to Shinsuke, first of all? That's my biggest question. What happened to Shinsuke? And second of all, Roman has really cooled off. Like they don't know what to do with him as double champ, and it's hurting him. And so he needs to lose one of the titles some way, somehow, and just go back to being Universal Champion. Let somebody be WWE champion and go from there because it's really confusing right now.
Or he could still keep both titles and they just get a direction.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I think that, I talked about it last week on the episode, like that SmackDown has absolutely cooled off because there's no direction for Roman.
No.
Now, does that mean it's because Brock's not there? Maybe. But there's no clear direction for Roman Reigns. I'm fine with this match if it was on the SmackDown or Raw or something, but not for the pay-per-view. Now, I did have written down, you took the words right out of my mouth. Do you think there's a chance that they come out and say all titles are on the line? I think if they were going to do that, they would have done it on Raw to give it a week, but they might still do it on SmackDown. I would like to see them do it on SmackDown.
It would not shock me if on the pay-per-view themselves, like, oh, by the way, all the titles are now on the line. Like it's, I don't know. It's just I think what they're trying to do, and I understand what they're trying to do. I honestly think they're going to try to stretch out this Drew McIntyre feud until we get to the England show in September. I think it is something like that. I think they're going to try to build to that, and I understand why I get that, but I think you could have Drew win Money in the Bank and have him say in England or wherever they're going to be at, I am going to challenge you for the titles. And I think you could do that, but I don't know, man. The first pay-per-view after WrestleMania, Roman is not defending either one of the titles, and it doesn't sit right with me.
Well, I think that they were trying to do the pay-per-view without Roman, and I think they got scared. And they decided, well, we got to get Roman on the show. What's the easiest way to get Roman on the show? Oh, let's put him in this match. I really think they were trying to do the show without Roman, which is fine. I get that. But, you just
if
took away a good match.
Yeah, and if he's still not 100%, I get that. But I think you could still have him show up without wrestling and be fine.
Right.
That's the whole intrigue about Roman on SmackDown. He never wrestles on SmackDown, but when he showed up, it was a big deal because it's Roman Reigns as Universal Champion. So he could still show up and like sit by the announce table and just watch. And then Drew could come out afterwards and we have the brawl after the match or whatever the case is. But yeah, it infuriates me that we went from having a really high profile match that was going to be really good because everything that the RK Bros and the Usos have been doing to this point has been amazing. Their promo stuff has been great. And now it just feels like a house show. And that to me, that's very frustrating.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I really do. Let's move on to another one of the matches, a rematch from WrestleMania, and that is Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins one-on-one once again. Man, I just think Cody's going to win this match. I think Cody's just got to be on this tear, and you got to keep it going with Cody. I'm excited for the match. I think it's going to be another barn burner, but what does that do for Seth if Seth loses again?
I think it's fine if Seth loses again if Seth wins Money in the Bank. Because I think that's the next pay-per-view after Backlash is Money in the Bank. So
should be one more.
One more.
Should be Hell in a Cell.
Maybe if they win, I guess if they went off last year, yeah, I think that would be the case. But honestly, I think Seth could lose here, and if he wins Money in the Bank, I think he's right back to where he was. So I think that could be a difference. I think it's too soon for Cody to lose because I think if he loses, it derails all momentum. Even if it's a cheap roll-up win or disqualification or whatever, I think it derails a lot of the momentum that they have with Cody. So yeah, I think Seth can lose this one as long as because he lost to Edge and he never really lost anything in that match as well. So I think he could lose to Cody as long as they've got something for him like a Money in the Bank or, beating Roman for the title at SummerSlam or something like that would be crazy. But yeah, I think that's the kind of direction that they're going to go in with him.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. I think these are two guys that neither of them honestly are going to be hurt by losing.
Right.
And like you said, it depends on the direction that they go. So I think you could have Seth win this match. There's a scenario where you could, and it's going to be fine for Cody because I feel like Seth does need to get a win. But I'm like you, if he's going to win Money in the Bank, or even if Cody's going to win Money in the Bank, I don't know. I think either of these guys are in prime position to do that.
But I think Cody has to win now especially after the promo Seth cut was it on Raw this week where he said, "You're not good enough. Dusty wasn't good enough."
Right.
I think from that point on, if Cody loses, then Seth's point is correct. And so I think that's why Cody has to win this match to prove that he is good enough to still stand up for his father, things like that. I think if Seth didn't say that line, I think Seth could win and be fine, but now I think Cody definitely has to win to maintain that momentum that he has.
By the way, on that After the Bell podcast with Cody, which again I can't put over enough, Cody talked about bringing the Winged Eagle back if he wins the WWE Championship. Yeah. Listen, I'm all for that. I'm so for that. Please give me that. Not that I don't like the current design of the WWE Championship, but give me that Winged Eagle. Yep, that'd be great. Another WrestleMania rematch that's coming up at WrestleMania Backlash. Edge and AJ Styles. Great match this past week with Damian Priest and AJ. And of course, we called it. Finn Balor got involved. We see Finn Balor aligning himself with AJ Styles, but how long does it last? Does Finn Balor turn to go with Edge and Damian Priest?
I think we are going to get another NXT moment at WrestleMania Backlash because I think Damian Priest will show up after the match. I think Tommaso Ciampa will show up after the match. Finn will come out to look like he's making the save. Pele AJ, and he joins Judgment Day, and I'm fine with that. Like if Finn doesn't turn and still stays with AJ, I'm fine with that. As long as they do something with Finn, I'm happy in this case. I think somebody new is going to join at Judgment Day. Judgment Day, the Judgment Day. Is that what they're calling themselves now?
Yes,
Okay.
they are Judgment Day.
They are Judgment Day. I think somebody is going to join, and I think it could be Finn, Ciampa, or Rhea at the pay-per-view. I think it's going to be one of those three. But yeah, I think it's going to be really cool. I just AJ's got to win something at some point as well. So I think we gotta be careful because AJ's been losing a lot lately, and it hasn't taken anything away from him, but he's got to get a win on a pay-per-view at some point down the line, very very soon, hopefully.
Right.
So
like my thought is like AJ might get the win at the pay-per-view, but then Finn turns on Monday or something.
Yeah.
Like you keep them together for a little bit. Maybe you get a tag match. Maybe you do get like Ciampa joins at the pay-per-view, and then you get Ciampa and Priest versus AJ and Finn, and then Finn turns or whatever. Because you want to make that moment feel special for Ciampa turning and make it a slow burn kind of thing. But yeah, this is ultimately leading to Finn turning on AJ and then us finally getting another Finn Balor versus AJ Styles match.
And a proper feud with it. Like an actual feud going forward with it. And like honestly, having Judgment Day have the demon at their disposal of like as kind of like the don't make us unleash the demon on you. Like that would be really cool to see something like that as well.
Yep. On down the card, Baron Corbin or Happy Corbin rather versus Madcap Moss, Bobby Lashley versus Omos, and then Charlotte Flair defending the SmackDown Women's Championship against Ronda Rousey in an I Quit match. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you care about Charlotte and Ronda?
About a -1.
Any more than you did at WrestleMania?
Less.
Okay.
Yeah, especially after the way that Ronda lost at Mania. I don't care about this feud. I wish it would end. I think Ronda is not going to be around for long. I think this might be her last match for a while because I don't think she's going to win. But yeah, I don't care. I really don't care about this feud at all. And I'm sick of Charlotte, if I'm going to be real honest. I'm sick of Ronda. I think if both of them went away for a little bit, I would be fine. and we could kind of do something different on SmackDown. But yeah, I really I have no desire for this match.
All this would have been so much different had Ronda just not agreed to come back because it would be Charlotte and Sasha.
Yep.
So
or just do the obvious choice. I know Bianca winning and like she's been doing well. Becky and Ronda at WrestleMania makes the most sense because now I don't want to see Becky and Ronda because I don't want to see Ronda at all.
Yeah, that does take away from that too. That's for sure. What's your thoughts on the involvement of Drew Gulak and what he's been doing? Do you hate it? Do you just don't care? What do you think?
I'm glad we're getting Drew more on TV. He's charismatic, and anytime like you can fit him in on something like this, I think it's fine. He is good at being like the guy that takes all the punishment and kind of like an R-Truth, but not as goofy as R-Truth. So it doesn't bother me as much, but it's kind of it is kind of what it is at this point with him.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm just like, yeah, it's fine if you can make it interesting, whatever. But yeah, I'm sort of, I don't want to say I'm down on this feud. Because I am more excited about this match than I am the Mania match. I do think an I Quit match will be better than a straight up singles match with them. But I don't know. I'm afraid Ronda's going to win this and she's going to hold the title. And I don't know. I don't know.
Honestly, I could see Charlotte winning here and we have a returning Bayley attacking her from behind or something like that to set that up. Good. And if Bayley comes back, then that's cool. Like that Charlotte versus Bayley is a feud that I think a lot of people kind of forget, but like it was pretty good when Bayley first came to the main roster. So I think that's a good way to go from there. But yeah, if Ronda wins, then oh boy. Oh boy.
Yeah. Because then who is she going to face? And who's going to look bad by facing Ronda after that? Yeah. It's definitely not been a good return for Ronda Rousey, and I hate that for her because her first run was really, really good, and it was only a year, and they did a really good job with her. And then this time, it's just not been great. So,
Yep.
All right. As we wrap this episode up, we put a bow on this week's edition of the podcast. We're going to hand out our high spots and turd sandwiches. And as we always do on a preview of a pay-per-view event, it's the high spot and the turd sandwich of the pay-per-view. What do we think is going to be the best thing on the show? What do we think is going to be the worst thing on the show? And I'm going to go first with my turd sandwich. I do not think the worst thing on the show is going to be Charlotte and Ronda. I think it's going to be Bobby Lashley and Omos. I have zero desire to see this match. Zero.
Yeah, that's kind of what mine was too. Is like I'd like Omos and MVP together. Like I think that duo together, I think works really well.
Sure.
Bobby Lashley by himself, though, he needs somebody to talk for him because he cannot cut a promo to save his life.
He does.
But that I agree. I think that's the one that I am not looking forward to the most as well. Or I'll probably throw Happy Corbin and Madcap Moss in there as well. Because I think that one's going to be better though than Charlotte Ronda. But yeah. I can't dog on Charlotte Ronda the entire time, so I'm putting Madcap Moss and then Happy Corbin in there as my other one.
That's true. So. Yeah, but I'm definitely going Lashley Omos on this one. As far as my high spot, what I'm looking forward to the most, man, I need Edge and AJ to have the redemption match. Not saying that their match at Mania wasn't good, because it was, but I'm looking for them to step it up a notch and really do something good. I don't think we'll have a screwy finish. I think this one will be straight up, and I think that's going to steal the show.
Yeah, I just think Edge needs to learn that not every single one of his matches has to go 35 to 50 minutes. I think he can shorten it down a little bit.
Well, that's true.
I think we'll be fine. My high spot's Cody Seth. Like I think they're going to try to outdo the WrestleMania match, and I think if anybody can outdo it, it's going to be them. And I think they're going to pull out some crazy stuff. I think Seth's going to hit a curb stomp, and Cody's going to kick out of it. And I think we're going to get the dusty punches and the elbow again, and I think we're going to get more than one crossroads and a Cody cutter, and I think it's going to be great. So I'm looking forward to that one the most.
Jared was on the podcast last week, and he said he was looking forward to the RK Bro versus the Usos match. Of course, we know we've talked about that's been changed. If that match hadn't been changed, would it have been your high spot of the night, or would you still gone with Cody and Seth?
It probably would have been my high spot just because of the intrigue of both titles being on the line. Like I think that, to me, not that the match itself wasn't going to be intriguing because both teams are fantastic, but to add that stipulation in, and I think it would have been an absolute barn burner of like false finishes and things like that. That would have been crazy.
Like I thought for sure before they added Drew into this that we were headed towards Randy and Roman. Like I thought for sure that's where we were going.
Yeah.
And I wish we were going there. Like I'm more intrigued with Randy and Roman than I am Drew and Roman. Honestly, like Drew and Roman is fine, but like getting Randy back in there, like that, I don't know.
Yeah, my only concern with Randy and Roman is both of them like to wrestle a much slower pace than normal.
Oh yeah,
and so it would have been a grueling match at times, I think, to watch. And that's so true. I think having Drew, because Drew can go, like Drew can wrestle a little slow, but he can also like switch gears really quick and pick it up. Yep. And so I think that's a good pace to have for both of them. But yeah, I think Randy will get to that point at some point pretty soon, but not for a while.
That is very true. All right. So this coming Monday, here are our thoughts on WrestleMania Backlash. Make sure you're tuned in to the BodySlam.net YouTube channel, the Sports Wire Radio, and of course, wherever you find your podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. That is where we are. Thank you so much for your support. We appreciate it very much. Again, follow us on social media at PBW Podcast. Andy is at Andy_PBWP, and I am at Chris Belcher 24. So make sure you keep it tuned in right here. We'll have all your coverage for everything current product. And just make sure you're following us, giving us support. We appreciate that very much. For Mr. Andy York, my name is Chris Belcher. Thank you for suffering through and hanging out with us this week on the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast. We will catch you guys down the road.